Significant weather developments across northern Australia, multiple tropical systems in play, flooding already underway in central Queensland, and the potential for more heavy rain in the week ahead. Right now, central Queensland is dealing with serious flood conditions. The Mackenzie River at Blackwater is running about 5 metres over the road. That is not unusual for this location. It floods a couple of times a decade, but the sheer volume of water coming through is substantial. Roads submerged. Trees that stand 5 to 6 metres tall are underwater. This is genuine flood damage territory. Emerald and the Central Highlands are seeing water levels start to ease, but it's still a concern. Meanwhile, closer to the coast around Rockhampton and Gladstone, conditions are deteriorating. More rain is falling. Rivers are still rising in those areas. The broader picture involves 3 separate systems that need our attention. First, the remnants of ex-tropical cyclone Koji, currently tracking northwest through inland Queensland near Cloncurry and Mount Isa. Second, tropical low 14U, which is heading away from Australian waters toward Vanuatu and eventually New Caledonia. That 1S, not our problem. And third, the monsoon trough itself, which is very active right now and setting up some concerning patterns for the next week to 10 days. Let's start with what S happening today and tonight, then work through the forecast period systematically. The monsoon trough is positioned across the top end and Cape York Peninsula. Very active, plenty of moisture feeding in from the Coral Sea. That S generating widespread showers and thunderstorms across northern Queensland. Some of those storms are producing significant rainfall totals. Central Queensland has copped the worst of it over the past 48 hours. Clermont reportedly broke rainfall records going back to 1916, that S over a century of records. Barcaldine saw 50 millimetres overnight, their first decent rain in months. Gladstone recorded 79 millimetres in one gauge reading. The Calliope River is at moderate flood levels. The reason central Queensland has seen such heavy falls is the interaction between that active monsoon trough to the north and a surface trough extending down through central parts of the state. That has been funneling moisture and instability into a relatively focused area. The result has been repeated rounds of heavy thunderstorms hitting the same regions. Tonight and into Wednesday, that pattern shifts slightly. The focus of heaviest rainfall moves north. Northwestern Queensland becomes the concern. The remnants of Koji are drawing moisture as they track northwest. Shower and thunderstorm activity will increase significantly across the Gulf country and Western Cape York Peninsula through Wednesday night into Thursday. This is a concern because northwestern Queensland is already saturated from previous rainfall. Areas north of Cloncurry across to Normanton down toward Winton all received substantial rain in recent weeks. Some locations saw flooding from systems that moved through around Boxing Day and Christmas. That water is still on the ground. You can see it on satellite imagery, particularly north of Cloncurry and around the Diamantina Lakes region south of Boulia. When the ground is already saturated, it takes much less rainfall to cause flooding problems. Flash flooding becomes a real risk with any thunderstorm that develops. River flooding can escalate quickly when catchments can absorb additional water. The Bureau of Meteorology is monitoring this closely. Current guidance suggests moderate to heavy falls are possible across northwestern Queensland Wednesday night through Friday, then a brief easing on Friday and Saturday before another surge of activity develops Sunday into next week. That brings us to the more complex part of this forecast. What happens from around the 20th of January through to Australia Day and beyond? Multiple forecast models are indicating a return to very active tropical conditions across northern Queensland. We're re-looking at the potential development of a low-pressure system in the Gulf of Carpentaria around Sunday or Monday. This would be indirectly associated with the remnant energy from ex-tropical cyclone Koji, which will have tracked across the northern part of the state during the week. A Gulf low typically means heavy rainfall for northwestern Queensland, Cape York Peninsula, and potentially the northeastern tropical coast, depending on the exact track. We're talking about Cairns, the Atherton Tablelands, Innisfail, that general region. The forecast models are showing this, but there is still uncertainty about intensity and exact positioning. Some models have been hinting at tropical cyclone development. The GFS model last night showed a strong cyclone tracking toward Townsville. That S been dropped from subsequent runs. The GFS is notoriously unreliable beyond about 5 days, particularly with tropical systems. The European model and Access, which is the Bureau S model, are both showing organised tropical low activity, but not necessarily reaching cyclone intensity. The reality is we're still 7 to 10 days out from this potential development. Too early for specifics, but the pattern is concerning enough that it's worth flagging now. What does this mean practically? Between the 20th and the 25th of January, northern Queensland is likely to see a prolonged period of wet weather. The type of rainfall we typically get during the monsoon season, not necessarily constant downpours, but repeated periods of moderate to heavy rain over multiple days. You might get 3 to 6 hours of steady rain, drop 75 to 100 millimetres, then a break, then another band comes through. Do that for 5 or 6 days and totals accumulate very quickly. 200 to 500 millimetres across northwestern Queensland is possible if this pattern sets up as forecast. 100 to 400 millimetres across the northeastern tropical coast. Keep in mind, forecast models typically underestimate tropical rainfall at this range, particularly for the northeast coast. The lower resolution of these models struggles to capture the intensity of tropical downpours. So those numbers might be conservative. For Townsville and the Central Coast, there's a possibility of heavy rain if that monsoon trough pushes further south than currently forecast. The Whitsundays region could be affected as well. This depends heavily on how the systems develop and track. Tropical cyclone development remains a possibility, but not a certainty. There's maybe a 10% chance of a cyclone forming offshore from northern Queensland before Australia Day, slim chance in the Gulf of Carpentaria, slim chance in the Coral Sea. The higher probability is for broad monsoon lows, similar to what generated Koji, but potentially weaker and less organised. Even without cyclone development, these systems can produce flooding rainfall. And that is the key concern, given how saturated northern Queensland already is. Areas that need to be watching this closely include everywhere north of about Charters Towers. That entire region from the Gulf across to Cairns and down to Mackay has had significant rain in recent weeks. Some areas, particularly the Central Coast and Central Highlands, have been flooded multiple times. The ground can take much more. Any additional heavy rainfall will cause problems. Rivers will flood more easily. Flash flooding will occur with less warning. Roads that are just reopening now after recent floods could go under again. Rural properties are particularly vulnerable. Livestock on low-lying ground, sheds and infrastructure near creeks, access tracks that are already damaged. These are the things that get hit hardest when floods come repeatedly in a short time frame. Now, there is a bit of good news in all this. For central Queensland, specifically around Rockhampton, Emerald and the Central Highlands, the worst appears to be passing. Rainfall today and tonight will be showery and thundery rather than the prolonged heavy falls seen over the weekend. There is still a flood risk, particularly this afternoon and evening with any severe thunderstorms that develop. But Wednesday through Saturday should see conditions improve noticeably. Showers and storms will continue. We're in the wet season, that is normal, but the persistent heavy rainfall pattern breaks down. Rivers can start to recede, roads can dry out and reopen, cleanup and recovery work can begin. Southeast Queensland, including Brisbane and the Gold Coast, has seen some showers this morning, overcast skies, but nothing significant in terms of rainfall totals. A few scattered storms are possible this afternoon. The main focus of heavy weather stays well to the north. For those planning around Australia Day, which falls on Sunday the 26th, there is a fair bit of uncertainty still. If you are in southern or central Queensland, conditions look manageable based on current forecasting. Some showers around, but not widespread heavy rain. If you're in northern Queensland, particularly from Townsville north to Cairns and Cape York, be prepared for wet weather around Australia Day. Could be heavy at times. Outdoor events might need contingency plans. That is about as specific as we can be at this range. Western Australia and the southern states aren't part of this tropical activity. That is a separate weather pattern altogether. This is specifically a northern Australia situation driven by the monsoon. What should you be doing if you are in affected areas? First, if you are in northwestern Queensland or the Gulf country, start preparing now. Check your property drainage, secure loose items that could wash away. Make sure you have supplies in case roads are cut, fuel for generators, food and water for several days. Stock up before the weather deteriorates, not during it. If you're in the northeastern tropical coast region, similar advice applies, but you've got a bit more time. Monitor the Bureau of Meteorology forecasts daily. They'll refine the details as we get closer to the event. For anyone in central Queensland who has just dealt with flooding, I know you are tired. you are probably dealing with damage and cleanup. Keep an eye on the forecast because there's a chance, albeit small, that heavy rain could extend further south than currently expected if that monsoon trough behaves differently than models suggest. Livestock owners should be moving animals to higher ground if you haven't already, particularly in areas that have flooded before. Those same low spots will flood again if we get the rainfall that's forecast. Check on neighbours and mates in remote areas. If someone's property got cut off by flooding recently, make sure they have what they need. Phone lines can go down, mobile coverage can be patchy. Check in while you still can. The Bureau issues flood warnings through their website and warning system. Set up alerts if you're in a flood-prone area. The earlier you know a flood is coming, the more time you have to respond. Remember, if it's flooded, forget it. Never drive through floodwater. Doesn't matter if you think you know the road. Water depth changes, road surfaces wash away, currents are stronger than they appear. Every year, people drown trying to cross flooded roads. Don T be one of them. Looking at the bigger picture, this is fairly typical for January and February in northern Australia. The monsoon season brings these active periods. The concern this year is the repetitive nature of the rainfall. Getting hit multiple times in quick succession doesn't give the landscape time to recover between events. Climatically, we in neutral conditions. Not El Nino, not La Nina. The Madden-Julian oscillation, which influences tropical weather, is in a phase that supports active convection over northern Australia. The southern annular mode is neutral. None of this points to an exceptionally wet season overall, but it does support these periodic bursts of heavy tropical rainfall. Comparing to past events, this isn't tracking toward anything like the 2011 Queensland floods. That was a much larger scale event affecting a bigger area with higher totals. The 2022 floods were also more widespread. What we're seeing now is more localised but intense. Specific regions getting hammered while areas nearby stay relatively dry. That is the nature of monsoon season weather. Thunderstorms and tropical lows create very focused areas of heavy rain, while areas just 50 kilometres away might see nothing. The flooding at Blackwater with the Mackenzie River running that high is significant but not unprecedented for that location. It floods regularly. The infrastructure is designed for it to some extent. The concern is the cumulative effect. Flood once, you deal with it. Flood 3 times in a month, the damage compounds. Roads deteriorate faster, erosion worsens, recovery costs mount. For those interested in the technical details, the current setup involves an active monsoon trough positioned across the top end and Cape York. That trough is forecast to persist through the week, then potentially intensify and shift slightly south around Sunday into next week. Upper level conditions are favourable for thunderstorm development. Their S divergence aloft. Wind shear is moderate, which allows storms to organise but not so strong that it tears them apart. Sea surface temperatures across the Coral Sea are above average, around 29 to 30 degrees Celsius. That provides plenty of energy for tropical development. The 500 millibar pattern shows a ridge over southern Australia with a trough across the north. That is a classic monsoon setup. The position and strength of that trough will determine exactly where the heaviest rain falls. Forecast models are in reasonable agreement about the general pattern but differ on specifics. The Access model, which is the Bureau's high-resolution model for Australia, tends to perform well with Australian tropical weather. It is showing the development of a Gulf low around Sunday or Monday, but not cyclone intensity. The European model shows similar timing but positions things slightly differently. The GFS has been erratic, which is why you see forecasts change dramatically from one run to the next with that model. The ensemble models, which run multiple scenarios, show a spread of outcomes. Most members indicate heavy rainfall for northern Queensland. Some show tropical cyclone development, some Don T. That spread tells us there is genuine uncertainty beyond about 5 days. What that means is Don T get locked into specific details yet. The pattern is clear. Heavy rainfall likely for northern Queensland around Australia Day. Exact locations, exact totals, cyclone or no cyclone, those details will firm up over the next few days. Check the Bureau of Meteorology website daily for updates. They'll issue watches and warnings as confidence increases. Local emergency services will provide region-specific advice if conditions warrant it. For anyone in far north Queensland, particularly Cape York, you are used to this type of weather. But even for you, this could be a significant event given the potential for prolonged rainfall. Don T, take it lightly just because you've seen it before. The wet season still has 2 months to run after this event. February and March can be just as active as January. So this isn't the end. It is part of an ongoing pattern. Prepare accordingly. One final note on ex-tropical cyclone Koji. The system has lost its tropical characteristics, but the remnant low still has energy. It is that remnant energy feeding into next week is potential developments. Tropical systems don't just disappear. Their moisture and energy get redistributed. Sometimes that redistributed energy seeds new development. That is what we're re-watching for here. This has been a detailed look at a complex forecast situation. Multiple systems, long forecast period, significant uncertainty in some details. But the key messages are clear. Central Queensland flooding eases over the next few days. Northwestern Queensland and the Gulf country face heavy rainfall Wednesday through Friday, brief easing over the weekend, then another round of heavy rainfall potential from around the 20th through Australia Day and beyond. Northern Queensland generally needs to be prepared for wet weather. Flooding risk is elevated due to already saturated ground. Tropical cyclone development is possible but not certain. Monitor official forecasts, prepare your property, look after livestock, check on neighbours, drive through floodwater. And stay informed as this pattern develops.